I'd like to share a story with you told to me recently by a friend of mine. A large family was in a crowded living room arguing over a missing family heirloom, a rug. And as the argument escalated, the children escaped outdoors to get away from the adults. And one of the children was climbing a tree and peeking back in the window to see how things were going. The child re-entered the room and silently led an elephant out of the room. The adults immediately stopped arguing because they realized the rug they had been arguing about had been there the whole time. Today, we are living in this proverbial living room. America is more divided than I've ever seen it in my lifetime. And instead of stepping back for perspective, we keep arguing until we turn away from each other. Friends are no longer returning phone calls, family is avoiding each other, and the defriending trend on Facebook has become so common that it hardly seems passive-aggressive any longer. So where do we go from here? What now? How do we shape this world together for our children when we won't even talk with one another? We need to zoom out and show up. And when we show up, we need to show up with and for each other. By zooming out, all of the edges will blend, and we'll see that we are not Team Liberal and Team Conservative. We are Team Virginia. And if we zoom out further, we're Team America, and further still, Team World. By zooming out, we can see our shared core values, and we can find our common place with our neighbor again. By zooming out and focusing on shared values, it actually gets to be a much easier lifestyle to live. You just do the right thing. By doing that, we can show our children the world that we should be building for them. Now, I know this all sounds much easier to hear and to say than it is to do, especially in times like these. So we have to hold ourselves accountable to our core values. And we have to enlist others to help hold us accountable to these values. And I would like to recommend to you that your very best allies are children. Because you've taught them the values, you've taught them the lessons, and they can show you where your daily life is falling short. About 3 years ago, my then 10-year-old came running into the kitchen and said, "Mom, Thomas Jefferson didn't even mean all men when he said all men are created equal, and we know he didn't mean women. Have they fixed that yet?" Have they fixed that yet? Have we as a society fixed a purposeful and historical exclusion of women from the Constitution? So I took a deep breath and I said, "No, honey, I'm sorry, that hasn't been fixed yet. That's called the Equal Rights Amendment, and it's not yet a part of our Constitution." And rather than ask me why or why not, she said, "Well, what are we going to do about that?" This is a child of action. What are we going to do about that? She hadn't meant to, but she totally called me out. I hadn't been planning to do anything about that. But I had to have a choice between two things. I either had to explain to her that we had to accept the very disappointing status quo, or we had to negotiate a path forward. She was putting in front of me one of my deeply held values of women's equality and bumping it up against a key lesson that I teach my children daily. See a problem, solve a problem. Sometimes that's about a mess in the kitchen, but sometimes that's about the Equal Rights Amendment. So I told her, okay, we can do this. Let's make a plan. And I called a leader in the movement, a woman in the Richmond area who was working on the Equal Rights Amendment and Virginia's ratification. And she invited us to a rally. Now, rally is not a particularly comfortable word or space for me. I was an accounting major undergrad, and we are not known for rally cries. But I had a kid looking at me and holding me accountable for doing what I said I valued. And so we showed up. And we showed up again and again and again. Fast forward a couple of years, and Virginia has an energetic campaign to ensure that we are the 38th state to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment. I'm simultaneously leading and parenting my children while following them, their clear-eyed vision, their open hearts, their open minds. Just when you think you've had an original thought, it turns out there are no original thoughts. Not only that, there's an 80s lyric for this one. I believe children are the future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. Our history has always been shaped by children and youth. We just don't tell our stories that way. In 1776, the Marquis de Lafayette and James Monroe were both 18. And when Barbara Johns led that massive walkout in Farmville, Virginia, she was 16. And all the students involved in that action, their direct action led to a court case, which got rolled in with other court cases and eventually was heard by the Supreme Court as a part of the landmark case, Brown v. Board of Education. Children and their direct action led to the desegregation of our school system in America. I believe equality is for everyone, and everyone should be working for equality. This should not be a partisan issue, and this should be a table so large, everybody is welcome to show up. This past Wednesday, there was a poll released in Virginia, and equality ranked higher than any other topic in front of the General Assembly in 2019. 81% of Virginians want the Equal Rights Amendment ratified. That is a higher percentage than people who want a tax cut. So there's the news flash, and there's the headline, and I think it's actually a statement of our shared humanity. People want respect, and they want equality more than they want anything else. And so our action, my action with the kids, our action with the campaign, can involve you as well. Are you willing to let a child lead the elephant out of the room? Are we willing to find our shared value? Are we willing to work together and get this done? And so on behalf of all of Americans and generations to come, I ask you, what are we going to do about that?